this hour with intensifying concerns on voting rights as President Trump and his officials seek to seize state election powers. As the president prepares to rally in the battleground state of Michigan tomorrow, early voting is happening now for the state's primary election scheduled to take place on August 4th. Earlier this month, Trump's DOJ sent letters to officials in three of Michigan's Democratic-leaning cities, including Detroit, detailing plans to have federal monitors observe voting during next month's primary. The Justice Department also warned several states, including Michigan, that they could face criminal action if they knowingly allow non-U.S. citizens to vote or to remain on their voting rolls. The voting doesn't really happen that much, but here we are. You know, I think the thing that's so interesting about Michigan is that it's not a state they need to flip. It's a state they need to hold. Right. And so the choice between Abdul al-Sayed, the more progressive on the left for Michigan, and Haley Stevens is going to be key, because it is a test of how the Democratic Party writ large is going to be able to operate. Can you go with someone who kind of galvanizes voters who maybe don't vote all the time, younger voters who feel like they are not a part of the process? Do you go that way? Or do you go with someone who has more of a history of bringing out the normal voter, someone who is consistently voting? And that is the test that they're going to face in Michigan.
Well, I am, because you brought up the two Dem primary opponents, I'm very curious the way that Trump talks about them during his visit this upcoming week, because that to me is going to be a tell about who he wants to win and who he is being told is more likely to lose. And so that I'm wondering, Eugene, if you already have some insider tea actually about that. You know, who is the better candidate for the Republican Party to run against?
I think what I've heard from people on the ground in Michigan is that Republicans are more likely to be interested in Abdul al-Sayed. That he is kind of, for Republicans, easier to paint.
So we're going to hear a lot about socialism.
Yeah, there's the fact, I mean, he's a brown man with the name Abdul al-Sayed, so there's the racism aspect that they'll be able to play in, which is what will resonate with some voters in Michigan, and so they are interested more in him as a.
I tell you, we talked about this a little bit with Eugene Robinson. Establishment Democrats a month ago were really nervous about this race for that same reason. But listen, anything can happen. I think because Michigan has this open primary that you don't really know how a race is going to turn. It's hard to poll when there's
an open primary.
Do you?
Oh my God, I love it.
Because they're unpredictable.
Yeah,
right,
it's
absolutely.
So much fun.
So that's why Michigan is still a state to watch.
Yeah, and one that they have to hold. Joining us now is Michigan Lieutenant Governor Garlin Gilchrist. He is also already the Democratic nominee for Michigan Secretary of State. That vote happens a little bit differently. Michigan, always bringing us some quirks. Sir, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
President Trump will be in your state tomorrow. I imagine that he will be talking about rigged elections. He will talk about al-Sayed and Stevens. Maybe he'll talk about you. What are you, as someone who's already an elected official, how are you guys thinking about the president's visit here?
We're bracing for Donald Trump to come back to Michigan and do the same thing he always does, which is lie about election results. He claims he won Michigan 3 times because he's obsessed, yet he can't just let go of the fact that he lost. So I'm sure that's going to be one of the first things he says out of his mouth. And then he's going to come and lie about what is the real truth, which is that his policies, his tariffs have raised prices on Michigan family, his cuts to Medicaid have closed hospitals and kicked people off of their health care. He's incredibly unpopular, so he's going to try the same old playbook of coming in line to people in Michigan rather than having better ideas and trying to rig elections, not just in Michigan, but frankly around the country in his favor, because people will vote against the people who hurt them, and that's Trump and his allies.
I think that's an important distinction. My question for you is, I think a lot of people anticipate that this administration is going to try to rig the vote. So what are you all doing there in Michigan to protect the vote? And I should say, I think the Attorney General just on Friday launched a new election protection effort. So can you talk to us about that and what you all are doing there in Michigan to protect the vote?
Well, the fact that the Attorney General even took that action, which I appreciate and applaud, is because the federal government, the Trump administration, the Trump Justice Department is the #1 threat to election integrity and security in Michigan and in this country. And so we are continuing to work together, and we have been for months, to prepare for all kinds of scenarios that this administration could try to pull, being creative and committed and aggressive to disrupting our elections. But what I know is that as Secretary of State of Michigan, I'm going to make sure that they can't come to our voters. They can't come through us to get to these voters, and they will make sure that we will protect them. We'll make sure that there will not be the kinds of disruptions at polling locations, that their monitors will stay in scope and they won't intimidate voters, won't intimidate the election workers on the front line of our democracy. It's our job to protect them, and we're prepared to do that in 2026. I'm prepared to do that in 2028 as well.
So a quick follow-up. We noticed in the lead into the segment that there will be federal monitors on the ground. Now, for folks who may not follow the nuances of DOJ policy, that's pretty normal. It's standard, right? But what are you all doing? You alluded to this a little bit, making sure that they stay within certain distances and places. Talk to us a little bit about how you guys are addressing the Trump administration sending federal monitors to your state.
I don't trust the administration and the president who sent these monitors. So sure, the election monitors have come to Michigan before, which have come to other jurisdictions. But this Trump is so committed and aggressive when it comes to trying to disrupt the voting process that we need to make sure that officials in Michigan know exactly what those monitors can and can't do, who they can and cannot talk to, what they can and cannot touch. And that's why we have to protect, again, our voters from this administration. I'll stand up against that as Secretary of State of Michigan. And frankly, my Republican MAGA opponent who I'm running against, handpicked by Donald Trump, this is someone who will open the door and let the suppression flow all throughout the state of Michigan, not just in my city of Detroit, but all across this state to intimidate voters. And this is not just going to intimidate Democratic voters. This is going to hurt rural voters. This is going to hurt voters in every single part of this state. We need someone who's not going to say how high when the president tells them to jump. We need someone who's going to be responsive to Michigan voters, and that's what I'll do as Secretary of State.
Lieutenant Governor, you know, Republicans have been very deft at creating boundaries to voting. They've been very deft at all of the ways in which Donald Trump has utilized the tools in his toolbox as president of the United States. So I guess when you talk about we're going to defend the right to vote, we're going to defend the people who are in Michigan, what are the specifics? And what are the actual things that you guys are doing to make sure that voters in Michigan, both on August 4th and more importantly in November, are protected, and that no matter what Donald Trump does, because, and I also think you guys are kind of lucky. Donald Trump usually gives folks a blueprint of what he's going to do. It's always at the top of his mind. So what are the specific things that you guys have already done as leadership of the state?
Look, we have to be at least as committed, as creative, and as aggressive as the vote suppressors. So that starts with reviewing the rules about what is legal and what is possible at polling locations, reviewing those rules about people with firearms and how close they can get to the entrance of a polling location, reviewing the rules and making sure that it's clear what election monitors, election challengers, and poll watchers can and cannot do in polling locations, making sure that we are being creative and clear with what the truth is about elections, making it clear to people that our voting laws in Michigan have not changed since 2024. So despite all of the BS that you hear, all of the debates in Congress about the voter suppression laws like the Safe America Act, that is not law. And so the confusion that we are hearing from voters, we are combating that confusion by telling the truth right now. That is why I spend so much time on the road, not just all throughout the community that I live in Detroit, but across all 83 counties of Michigan, talking to people about what the truth is, giving them information and resources so they can bat down any of the lies that they hear online or that they hear in their communities. So by making sure that those rules are clear about what happens in polling locations, making sure that election officials have clear guidance on what they need to do and what the laws in Michigan are they need to follow, making sure that local law enforcement knows their responsibilities in the face of bad actors and disruptors potentially trying to ruin people's voting experiences. That is what we've been practicing for. We've been doing tabletop exercises for months and ready to execute on the first round of those in the August 4th primary, and we'll build up toward the November election.
Lieutenant Governor, before we are out of time, I want to play two recent endorsements that Haley Stevens has received. Let's listen to Gretchen Whitmer and Jim Clyburn quickly.
I know she has what it takes to energize Democratic voters. And we need that because all of you know what's going on in this country. We have got to make sure that this turnout, this Democratic turnout in November is too big for Trump to rig.
We delivered because Michiganders expect their leaders to put politics aside and get the job done, just like everyone does at home, right? And that's exactly why I'm here today. And I am proud to endorse Haley Stevens for the United States Senate.
A week out from this election, whom would you prefer to run on the Democratic ticket with?
Look, the voters are going to pick this, not people who are making endorsements. And I'm looking forward to making sure that that candidate wins in November alongside me, alongside whoever our gubernatorial nominee is, and all up and down the ticket. But I've built a strong coalition across not only Democrats, but across the state of Michigan, of folks who not only want the elections to be run with integrity, but who also want to make sure that they get good services from the government. I'm the only statewide software developer elected across this country. I know what it takes to get things done, and know what it takes to mobilize people, especially in the face of a generational threat. We need to make sure that the MAGA movement doesn't get the Secretary of State's office, their number one priority in the country as far as in the state of Michigan. If they win this one, they'll use it to consolidate power. Well, I'm the one who's going to stand tall and stop that, and I'll help the other people who the voters decide or the voters choose in August to win in November. So I need everyone to join my movement at GarlinGilchrist.com to help make sure that democracy can be protected and we can all stand tall together going forward.
Endorsement aside, Lieutenant Governor, who are you going to be voting for? You are also a voter.
I'm not going to share who I'm going to vote for because that's private information here in the state of Michigan. But what I will tell you
is don't think that the voters deserve to know who you're voting for, who you're supporting, as someone who's asking for their vote again?
I'm not making an endorsement in that race. I trust the voters to decide, and my job as Secretary of State is to make sure they have the process and the ability to do so without fear of intimidation.